Do we raise children to be immature adults? Do we raise them to be immature adults?
This young generation, because of all the reasons we've talked about and more, seems to exhibit the traits of being very conflict avoidant, very uncomfortable with uncomfortable. That has some impact that are sometimes funny, quote unquote, but always tend to make somebody feel more lonely. So, for example, and I've seen this happen, I've heard about these stories so many times. A young employee who may feel they're in line for a raise, but is so uncomfortable to go to their boss and ask for a raise that they just quit, that they would rather quit than have an uncomfortable conversation. And then sometimes it is followed by an angry email that says, I'm undervalued, you don't appreciate me, you underpay me, you know? And I've heard it happen so many times where...
And that's crazy, right? Because people are so adverse to just dealing with their problems head on that they just duck and run. And again, going back to social media, that might be a product of social media as well. Whereas if you get into an altercation with somebody, you can just subtweet them, or you can just fight over, your keyboard by, sending posts, or, just battling over social media and not actually having to face your problems in the real world. And so you're not developing the skill set and the actual fortitude to deal with your problems head on. So like if I have a problem with, and that's why I think sports are so good. Because if I had a problem with my teammate, like off the field or even on the field, like we had a long season ahead of us. Like I was going to see him in weights. I was going to see him the next day at practice. We had to play a game together. We had to figure out how to move past those issues and, come to at least a cordial, solution to where we can, move on in a civil manner. And a lot of young kids, especially in Gen Z, they're just adverse to this sort of skill set.
The leadership is like, what? We would have happily, like, I'm sorry, we were either planning on giving you a raise, we'd happily give you a raise, And it's really uncomfortable to walk in your boss's office and be like, hey, I'm working really hard, can I have a raise, please? Now, the time you do get to quit is when you've had this conversation 4, 5, 6 times and you've seen nothing and had no feedback and had no impact. Then absolutely you quit. And absolutely you say, you undervalue me, you underappreciate me, we've had this conversation 5 or 6 times. Then it's their fault.
Exactly. And so now we're at an age where people think that they are the most valuable just because they woke up this morning. It's like you aren't, just the ultimate prize just because you woke up this morning. It's like, yeah, that should be your goal, but you have to mold yourself into that, right? And if you have worked hard, if you put in the work and you face, you go and you go to somebody who is above you and say, hey, like I've been working hard, I think I deserve some higher rank, and they just laugh at you, well then it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do next? Right? It's not let me just avoid this because since since they haven't given me this rank automatically, they must not value me, right? And it's like, woe is me. They don't see me as a person. And then you start to get into this mindset where, going back to our last video, where people think they're useless, they don't think they matter, etc.
Yeah, but I think also that comes from not, I guess, knowing corporate structure either, because that's like a normal thing. Like you go to your boss when you're ready to get a raise. You essentially pitch yourself and like, hey,
Right.
ready for a raise? This is what I've done this whole year, or these are my new skills.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Right. It's like, yeah, I think I deserve this. I think this is where we're at now. And it's almost like you're literally pitching for a new job. And
Yeah.
so people think that they have a job and they see the ceiling or the lack thereof. They see the sky's the limits at this job, but then they don't want to do what is required to, reach the sky. It's like, oh, I'm here now. Everything will just take care of itself. And I remember I kind of fell into that, coming up a little bit where I was like, okay, I've been good at things and they recognize me in this way. But then sometimes you get to this place of complacency where you're like, oh man, like it's almost like the I'm already good. Me and my family has an inside joke on I'm already good, and it has involves dealing with my brother. But it's like, yeah, I'm already good. I don't have to work anymore because I've already reached a level. People recognize me. It's like, but I thought you wanted to be the best that you could be. That's what you say. You want to reach the boss status. It's like you're still not doing what is required to be a boss, and you're still not trying to find ways, innovative ways, because that's what a boss has to do. They have to, be the trailblazers, be the visionaries for the company, and set the path forward. And if you're not doing that for yourself as an employee, well, then how do you expect to be a boss?
Yeah, and I kind of fell in that too a little bit, um, because I remember like working at a job and I was like, okay, I mean, I didn't plan on being there long anyways.
Right.
Like I was just there, getting my experience, all that kind of stuff. And then I would hear like little people and coworkers would come up to me. They'd be like, "You should be paid more. You should be at this level. You should be doing this. They should just give it to you," kind of thing. And I was like, "You're right. I do deserve that." And then it took a point for me to be like, "Okay, that's a bit entitled, and that's not how that's not how it is in the corporate world. In the real world, you don't just get things
Right.
because you think you deserve to get them. You get them because of hard work. You get them because it's God's will, kind of thing." So,
Right. And also just sometimes you just need to ask. The
yeah.
even the word says ask and you shall receive. It's like you gotta ask. It's like you just want to receive something for nothing a lot of times. And a lot of times that is why you don't have.
because they had all the information. But again, it's really funny how many young kids they would rather quit than have a difficult conversation, or they'd rather break up than have a difficult conversation, or worse, they'd rather ghost someone than break up with them, because it's really uncomfortable to have a fight and a breakup and call each other names. It's much easier to just turn off all the social media, unfollow everywhere. I know we've been dating for 6 months, but I'm just going to now ignore every text, ignore all your calls, and think about it we talk about service.
Oh,
And
yeah.
before he gets into service,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. So I watched a show called Politics, and the girl, the host, Alex Clark, she was saying how she was dating this guy for 6 months, and she asked him a simple question like, "Hey, why don't you ask me about my job? Like, why don't you find that important to ask me?" And then he ghosted her and didn't talk to her anymore, and then told their mutual friends that she was weird for asking that question. Yeah, I was like, what?
Yeah, that's very interesting. It's like,
Yes, poor communication.
why couldn't you say, hey, maybe it's not something I want to talk about,
Yeah.
or maybe it struck something weird up in the guy? But I mean, also on the flip side, for the host there, it's a good sign of like, okay, well,
He wasn't it.
dodged a bullet. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, because that definitely ain't it.
Yeah.
That's buns. But yeah, before he gets into service though, it's so easy to just unfollow people and that be like your declaration to the world that you don't
We're
mess with
not
them
friends
anymore.
anymore.
And it's like, did y'all even try to, work this out in a cordial manner? Did y'all even try to come to an understanding, even if y'all aren't moving forward with the relationship at, with a really good relationship, at least y'all can be at a level where y'all find some middle ground where y'all can move forward, be cordial, be civil in the future without having to involve the outside world in such a dramatic fashion. Because that's really what you're doing. You're involving the whole world when you post stuff online,
Yeah.
especially if you have a public account. I mean, even private accounts, like all you gotta do is accept a bunch of invitations, and who doesn't want more followers? Most of the time, private accounts, they'll have a bunch of followers. They'll just be like, "Oh, I'm private," just to say I'm private, but they're not really private.
But
And so,
yeah. But we see that a lot with celebrities. Like we'll see in tabloids or news articles like, "Oh, this celebrity, unfollow this celebrity. They're not friends anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So
so again, it's like, who are the people that we're following, right? We're living in a time where people are like the leaders. We have poor leadership, and they're developing a poor following. And the following are the people that end up being the leaders later down in the future, because a lot of the following are, people of the younger generation.
Think about the service or disservice we do the other person for their
Yeah,
their
pay
point
attention
of
to this,
view.
folks.
It's like you got in a car accident. It's like you were just killed. It's like you just disappeared off the planet. That is trauma. Because you're uncomfortable to have an uncomfortable conversation, you would do that to another person. So service goes both ways, which is I will make myself uncomfortable and have a difficult conversation, even if I bumble it and screw it up and it ends up being a screaming match.
Man. Yeah, so service. And I think that Shepherd Baptiste has an awesome message for you guys before we break down the rest of this clip.
From a Christian perspective, service is everything. Even Jesus says in Mark that the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and give his life as a ransom for many. Having a servant heart, attitude and mindset will help us to operate more in the spirit of Christ, where we don't avoid conflict, but still offer compassion and love.
Yes, exactly right there.
Amen.
Shepherd Baptiste, everybody.
with
Yes.
all the wisdom.
With all the wisdom, as he always has. And it's service. It's like even the Son of Man, and we always give a Christian perspective here on this channel, even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but he came to serve. And so it is all about being of service to people. And like Simon Sinek just said, like how much of it is a disservice if you're avoiding these tough conflicts and neither one of you are able to grow and you're just kind of blowing the other person off. It's like, no, you're not letting them down easy, or you're not letting them off the hook, or even letting yourself off the hook. You're doing a disservice on both ends because neither one of you are able to grow, and you're not serving yourself, you're not serving the other person, you're not serving the greater society around us, because then y'all both take these toxic mentalities into other relationships to influence other situations that thus influence other situations. So it's a trickle effect.
Because
Get
that
back
is
into
a
the
better
clip.
option than traumatizing a person where they have to believe that first of all, that I've died because they can't get hold of me, the panic. And then when they realize I'm alive because they see me on Instagram, that now I've destroyed their self-confidence. How dare somebody do that to another human being? Because you're just a little uncomfortable of having an uncomfortable conversation. Where we can help is we can teach people how to have uncomfortable conversations. That is a skill set.
Let's teach them.
We don't teach leaders how to have uncomfortable conversations. We don't teach students how to have uncomfortable conversations. We don't teach, we can teach these things all over the place. And I think it's a big gaping hole in curriculum. We teach, maths and we teach English, but we don't teach social interaction. We don't teach listening. We don't teach how to have uncomfortable conversations. We don't teach how to give and receive feedback. Now you tell me which is going to be more valuable for the rest of your life: how to have a difficult conversation or trigonometry.
Yeah.
And shouldn't we be, shouldn't we be preparing people for life?
Oh yeah, I agree
Exactly.
with that. I agree with that.
Like, we're not preparing people for the life that is to come.
Yeah.
We are always preparing them for, just to be slaves to the system. A worker bee. Yeah, exactly. I like what you just put there. And it's not helpful to anybody, because now we're at a point where people don't know how to interact socially. And that is the foundation of any thriving society, is relationship building and people being able to work together to advance society. But now we have people who are so fixated on themselves partly because they don't know how to interact with other people. But if we can get to a place where we're teaching people how to be of service, how to interact and be effective in their social interactions, then we can right the ship before it just totally sinks. But it might be a long way coming.
Yeah, and that kind of like leads into my point on where I think it should start.
All right.
Amen.
Before you get to your point, though, we want to ask, do we raise children to be immature adults? please leave that down. Let's spark up a great conversation. We'd love to hear your perspective because your perspective absolutely matters. Now, let's go to Lady Zipporah.
Yep, you got
We should have
it.
chose an easier name for me to pronounce. The Lady of the Hour.
Having uncomfortable conversations starts in the home. The growing decline in nuclear and multi-generational family units could be the cause.
I think communication skills start in the home. And a lot of times, family members may avoid certain topics in order to keep the peace. They don't want to disturb anyone's feelings, anyone's perspectives, or anything. They don't want to disrupt anything. But I think it might be helpful to bring them up in order to practice those conversations, like first in the home before they get out into the real world. So they'll know, oh, why do I feel angry? Or why, or how should I respond in a certain way in order for it to be a fruitful conversation rather than just banging our heads together because we don't agree with each other. So when we don't have those conversations to practice, what do we expect will happen in the real world? So I think it just starts in the home.
Amen.
We are in a time where ineffective leadership is developing even less effective followings. This should be a reminder to be wise with who you follow and responsible with how you lead.
So my point is we need to help people understand how valuable they can be, especially as Christians, because that is our main thing, is to serve other people, to show them the love of Christ, to show them that they are loved, that they are valued, and to pass that forward to other people. I believe we are in an age of rebuilding. God is ready to rebuild our spiritual temples, and as a result, the physical world will start to trend in a quality direction. So as we talk about our bodies being temples, a temple and a house for the soul. And if we can get that clean, if we can get that right, if we let God rebuild that, then the greater world outside of us, these social interactions, the way we view society, the way our society actually looks, will start to trend in a better direction. And then we won't have such a generation of just people who are look down upon themselves. Is what it comes down to at the end of the day. Amen. I can agree with that, but that's just our perspective. What is your perspective? Do we raise children to be immature adults? If yes, why? If no, why? We'd love to hear from you. If you like this video, I know you're going to want to check out this video next because YouTube is recommending it from us to you individually. We will see you over there. But until then, don't be serve the alpha
And the omega.
like for the algorithm.